Hello, I'm going to be reading from The Clue in the Crumbling Wall from the Nancy Drew series, and I'm continuing with chapter 23. This chapter is titled In the Dungeon. Okay. Nancy was stunned at the sergeant's words. Under arrest? She gasped. What for? The officer opened a drawer and took out the summons, which he read aloud. Nancy learned that she was charged with illegal entry into the Heath estate, as well as damage to property and stealing. Who preferred the charges? The girl asked, unable to believe what she had just heard. Mr. Hector Keep. Oh, Nancy indignantly denied all charges save one. She readily admitted she had disobeyed a no trespassing sign, but felt she had legitimate reason for doing so. Lieutenant Masters can explain everything, she insisted. Please ask her to come here, and I'd like to get in touch with my father, too. Mr. Drew arrived shortly, followed by the young policewoman. He consulted privately with her, Captain Walker, and the chief of police. Sounds like they have an in. Nancy then was called in to tell her story. Eloquently, she spoke of what she had seen and heard at Heath Castle. She mentioned her suspicion regarding Keep's association with the two men, Biggs and Cobb, who she learned were still at large. The girl concluded by saying that she thought Keep made the charges against her to prevent her from working on the case. That's right. Go, Nancy. There's something to what you say, the chief agreed. Well, if Mr. Keep will let me tear up these complaint papers, I'll call everything off. That's nice. That doesn't always work out that way for people. But the wily lawyer could not be located, so the warrant remained intact. In the end, Nancy was allowed to go home with a promise on her part that she would come back to headquarters the following morning. She and her father talked until midnight. Then Mr. Drew insisted his daughter get some rest. Obediently, the girl went to bed, but she could not sleep. The day's happenings had been too exciting. Hour after hour, Nancy struggled to fit together the pieces of the crazy puzzle. Several times she thought she had the problem solved, but one item kept eluding her. Hector Keep wanted me arrested to hinder me from going to Heath Castle. But why? Surely not because of anything I've seen there already. Is it because of something else hidden on the place? The girl felt sure there was something more to it than this. Suddenly, she was sure she had the answer. She could hardly wait now to get back to the police station. Tiptoeing downstairs early in the next morning before the others in the house were awake, she ate her breakfast, wrote a note to her father, and left for headquarters. The day sergeant was just coming on duty. He grinned at her, saying that she need not have reported so soon, that she hardly looked rested. I didn't sleep a wink last night, Nancy admitted, but I did get some ideas. As soon as Lieutenant Masters comes, I wish she might go out with me for a little while. The officer said he felt sure this could be arranged. When the young policewoman came in, the girl repeated her request. Miss Masters, will you go to Heath Castle with me? I have a hunch the mystery will be solved there this morning. At Nancy's instigation, several policemen were detailed to station themselves outside Heath Gardens to question anyone entering or leaving the grounds. The girl left at once with the lieutenant, and the men followed in another car. She has a lot of clout or whatever. She has a lot of sway with this little police station. Just what do you expect to find at the castle? The young woman asked Nancy curiously. It's my opinion that Hector Keep or one of his men kidnapped the real Floriana, Nancy disclosed to her companion. He'll hold her until Madame Fernandez can establish her claim to the fortune. Keep will take the lion's share of it, and then he'll disappear. But what has Heath Castle to do with it? Lieutenant Masters asked. You don't think Floriana is being imprisoned there? That's my theory. Maybe it's just fancy, but it's the only reason I can think of why Hector Keep went to such lengths to have me arrested. He found out I was hot on the trail of Miss Flower. Oh, God. This is good. Okay, it's getting good. He found out I was hot on the trail of Miss Flower, the real Floriana, and he had to get her out of the way. What better hiding place for his prisoner than the castle? Then, of course, he'd have to prevent me from trespassing there anymore, So he cooked up the story you heard. Relating to this way too much, way too much. Your reasoning certainly is logical, her companion admitted. The disabled, I'm doing my edit there, woman easily could have been brought to the place at night, locked in one of those towers. She would be quite helpless. Dope. What worries me is whether we can get in, said Nancy, after she and the policewoman had climbed the wall and set out for the castle. I'm glad those dogs are gone anyway. If necessary, we can force a lock, Lieutenant Masters assured her. You have the law at your side. How nice. She smiled. How nice that Nancy has the law on her side. Reassured, Nancy led the way to the front entrance. To her surprise, it stood ajar. Hector Keep may be here, she whispered guardedly, or perhaps Cobb, and possibly Biggs. There was not a sign of anyone stirring about the premises. Noiselessly, Nancy and the policewoman slipped inside the castle. Hearing no one, they tiptoed along the winding corridor to the courtyard garden, where the entrances to the towers were. Nancy tried the door of the one in which she had been imprisoned. It was not locked. Will you stand guard while I go upstairs? Nancy asked the policewoman quietly. The other nodded, and the girl noiselessly ascended the circular iron staircase. She was gone several minutes, and Lieutenant Masters was just becoming uneasy about her when Nancy reappeared. No one there, she reported. I looked over the grounds too, but I didn't see anything suspicious. What's next? Asked the officer. I love that she gets to be in charge of the officers. Like, she just tells them what to do and they're just like at her disposal. We need that. We need to be in charge of our officers more. They should be working for the citizens. Okay. Okay. What's next? Asked the officer. There's a trap door, Nancy revealed, pointing toward the door. What it opens into, I haven't been able to find out. To raise it was indeed a task, but together they finally got it up. Cautiously, Nancy and Lieutenant Masters peered into the darkness below. The policewoman snapped on a flashlight, and they could see a flight of iron steps leading down into a long corridor. Grilled doors opened from it. It looks like a series of dungeons, Nancy exclaimed. A regular old-time prison. Anyone below? Lieutenant Masters called. There was no answer, though her voice echoed weirdly. Then Nancy thought she heard a sound like a moan. She and the young woman scurried down the stairway. Lieutenant Masters flashed her light into the first cell. It was a tiny room, musty and dark. The only bit of sunlight visible filtered in through a high barred window. These rooms must have been built to imitate the old dungeons in the original castle, Nancy commented. No doubt the Heaths used them for storing food, the lieutenant said. The next two rooms also were empty, but as Nancy and the policewoman approached the third, they distinctly heard someone moan. Oh! Pausing to listen intently, they caught a pitiful cry. Okay, got to take it down a notch. A pitiful cry from the far end of the corridor. Let me out! Let me out! Please help me! Nancy and the young officer sped up the passageway. A small woman, disabled and weak, had pulled herself to the grilled doorway. She clung there, her eyes eloquent and beseeching. You're Floriana, Nancy said quickly. No, no, the prisoner shrank back. I am Miss Flower. We'll talk about that later. Nancy unbolted the door. She and the Lieutenant Masters assisted the woman along the musty corridor, but it was slow work, for she had to pause often. Who brought you here? The policewoman asked her kindly. And have you been mistreated? I've had enough to eat and drink, Miss Flower said, but I've been so perplexed. Questioned by Nancy and Miss Masters, she revealed all that had befallen her. An elderly man who had shown an identification card of a government agent had taken her away from Clover Farm in an automobile. It was dark when they reached their destination. She had been hurried inside a dimly lighted building and locked in the cell. And the way that this is told, that sounds deeply traumatizing. But he guided me into the cell. I was told it was because of not paying enough income tax. She ended the story. What does it all mean? A great deal has happened since you left your home 10 years ago, Nancy said. I don't know what you're talking about. You are Floriana, Nancy said with quiet conviction. Why not admit it? No, no, never. Do you realize where you are now? Nancy asked, taking a different tack. It was dark when they brought me here. I could distinguish nothing. You are at Heath Castle. Heath Castle? You mean Walt? Walter Heath died a number of years ago, Nancy said gently. He loved you to the end and willed all his property to you. Walt? Dead? The woman whispered. Then to the very end he thought of me as I used to be, beautiful and a talented dancer. He thought of you as you still are, this is the policewoman, not Nancy. He thought of you as you still are, the policewoman spoke up, a beautiful character with great charm. Floriana brushed a wisp of straggling gold-gray hair from her eyes. Her slumping shoulders stiffened. But these withered, ugly legs, she cried out. Oh, I want to be left alone with my sorrows. I have my little farm. Take me back there, please. You mean you don't want Heath Castle? Asked Lieutenant Masters. I loved Heath Castle, and I loved Walt, Floriana said brokenly, but I hid myself away so that he never would see me disabled. Perhaps it is foolish pride, but it seems best that I finish out my days as I am doing. Your sister Vera wants to see you very much, said Nancy. She is a widow now with a little girl who looks a great deal like you. For the first time, Floriana was deeply moved. Vera has a little girl? She murmured. Where is she? She and her mother, Mrs. Fenimore, live in River Heights. The child's name is Joan. She likes flowers and gardening just as you do. I can't tell you the whole story now, but they need your help. If I had known before, Floriana began. You were too proud to write to your sister? Yes, at the beginning. Then later a letter I sent to her came back. I had no idea where she was. Mrs. Fenimore and Joan want to leave the neighborhood where they live. Joan would be so happy in the gardens here, Lieutenant Masters said. Are the gardens still beautiful? The former dancer asked dreamily. Nancy hated to tell the woman the truth. She tried to soften it by saying, They have been badly neglected, but they could be replanted. Only one who truly loved the place, though, would want to do it. To me, it would be a challenge, Floriana said with sudden spirit. A memorial to Walt. She added that the castle and its grounds really were pretty large for only 3 people. What a wonderful spot it would be for underprivileged children, the policewoman mused. Oh my gosh, this is great. River Heights always has needed such a place, especially for its disabled youngsters. Oh my God, I like this. I'd like to help them too, Floriana announced excitedly. Yes, I'll build this place into a beauty spot again. I'll bring Joan and Vera here, and later we'll see about others. Good, approved Nancy. We'll take you right to your sister, and then I'll go to settle my score with Mr. Hector Keep. Go settle your score with him. That's right. The trio had reached the foot of the stairway. Before the disabled woman could be helped up the steps, there came a disturbing sound from overhead. The next instant, the trapdoor dropped into place. As the bolt clicked, a voice reached their ears. That'll hold you. Try to get out now. The footsteps died away. Then all was quiet in the dungeon. I think I know who that is. Okay.